Today, we are diving into a legal story that, honestly, it reads more like a thriller than a dry court case. It's a fascinating story about a law that was passed to take away a woman's rights, but was then twisted by a court to do the exact opposite. So how on earth did they pull that off? Let's find out. And really, the whole thing boils down to this one question. Can a court take a law, one passed with a very clear, some would say unfair, intention, and just reinterpret it to mean something completely different, all in the name of justice? Well, the answer isn't just yes, it's an absolute masterclass in legal creativity. Okay, let's get right into it. Our story doesn't start with a law or a courtroom, it starts with a person. A woman named Shah Bano, and her personal struggle would end up sparking a legal battle that would shake the very foundations of Indian law. And this quote from the Supreme Court, man, it just gets right to the heart of the issue, doesn't it? It's saying that in this kind of society, a woman's entire life is often poured into her marriage. So when that marriage ends, she can be left with absolutely nothing. This was the raw human reality the law had to deal with. And this was the exact reality for Shah Bano Begum. Just imagine this. After 43 years of marriage, after raising 5 children, her husband, a very successful lawyer, divorced her. She was left elderly, she was sick, and she had pretty much no way to support herself. So what did she do? She turned to this law, Section 125 of the Criminal Procedure Code. You can think of it like a universal safety net, a lifeline that was designed to prevent anyone, especially divorced women, from being left completely destitute. And the key thing here, it applied to every single Indian citizen, no matter their religion. And guess what? She won. In 1985, in what was a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court sided with her. It said that this fundamental duty to prevent people from falling into poverty, well, that trumped any arguments based on personal religious law. It was a massive, massive victory for women's rights. But, and there's always a but in these stories, that victory was incredibly short-lived. The Shah Bano ruling created a political firestorm. Why? Because some very powerful conservative groups saw the court's decision as meddling in religious affairs. The backlash was immediate and intense, and it put immense pressure on the government. So what did the government do? It passed a whole new law in 1986, specifically designed to cancel out the court's decision. And you can just see the whiplash right here on this slide. The new law was a complete 180. The Shah Bano ruling had given women lifelong support. The new act? It slashed that support down to just a few months. After that, the responsibility was pushed onto her family or a community board. Now that very short time frame is called the iddat period. It's essentially a waiting period of about 3 months. The new law was crystal clear. A husband's financial duty to his ex-wife was over after those 3 months. After that, she was basically on her own. So as you can probably guess, this new law was challenged almost immediately, and that set the stage for round 2. A whole new legal battle. Danial Latifi versus the Union of India. And this time, it was the new law and Parliament itself that was on trial. The people challenging the act came out swinging. They argued it was just fundamentally unconstitutional. They said, look, this discriminates against Muslim women, taking away a right that women of every other faith have. They argued it violated the right to equality, the right to a life with dignity, and that the so-called alternative support system was impractical and, as they put it, illusory. Now, on the other side, the government defended the act. Their argument was that Parliament has the power to make laws, and that includes laws based on personal religious codes. They said the whole point of the act was to preserve religious identity, and that it offered its own different but valid system to help women. So this created a huge dilemma for the Supreme Court. I mean, what do? Do you strike down a law that was passed by the elected parliament, which could spark a constitutional crisis, or do you uphold a law that, on its face, seems to completely strip women of their fundamental rights? It was a legal and ethical tightrope walk. And this is where the story gets so brilliant. Because instead of picking option A or option B, the court found a secret door, a third path, a path that was hidden in plain sight, right there in the words of the controversial law itself. The entire case, everything, hinged on this one phrase from the law. The act said a woman was entitled to a reasonable and fair provision and maintenance to be made and paid within the iddat period. Now, look really, really closely at those two words, provision and maintenance. The court asked a simple question. Are they the same thing? And their answer was a game-changing no. And this, right here, is the core of their genius argument. The court said these are two totally separate duties. Maintenance, they said, that's the small, regular payment to cover her living costs during the 3-month iddat period. But provision, that was something much, much bigger. They said that was a one-time lump sum payment that had to be made to provide for her entire future. So here's the punchline. The court said the law's reference to the iddat period wasn't limiting the amount of support a woman could get, not at all. It was only limiting the time frame in which her ex-husband had to pay it. He had to arrange for her entire future financial security within those first 3 months. And just like that, with one clever twist of interpretation, the court had resolved the whole crisis. It didn't have to strike down the law passed by Parliament. It just had to show everyone what the law, in its view, had meant all along. So let's just walk through that final verdict, step by step. 1. A husband absolutely has to make a fair provision for his ex-wife's whole future. 2. That responsibility goes way beyond the short iddat period. 3. He just has to get that payment settled within that period. And 4, because the law now offers this serious protection, it's no longer discriminatory, and therefore it's perfectly constitutional. And here is the beautiful irony of it all. The act, a law created specifically to overturn the Shah Bano ruling, was declared valid. It was upheld. But, in upholding it, the Supreme Court interpreted it in such a way that it ended up protecting the very right it was designed to destroy. This leaves us with a really deep question about how power works in a democracy. It shows how the courts can act as this crucial check, not just by throwing out laws, but by rereading them to line up with our fundamental rights. It really makes you wonder, right? What's more powerful in the end, the original intention behind a law or the actual words used to write it?